I've been practicing intermittent fasting for about 10 years, and I love it. Here's why. Intermittent fasting has helped me lose weight and maintain that weight loss without any crazy strict food rules. I've used intermittent fasting to lose postpartum pregnancy weight after 2 pregnancies. It increases my energy. It simplifies a huge chunk of the day, and that's really helpful as a person with type 1 diabetes. It simplifies my blood sugars for a huge chunk of the day because I'm not introducing food. It reduces how much insulin I need every day because I'm reducing how much food I'm eating. For me, it inevitably removes about 400 calories a day from my diet because I'm not eating breakfast and I don't really add breakfast later in the day. Those 400 calories are what makes the difference between me gaining weight or maintaining my weight. It's a small amount, but over the course of a week, it adds up. I don't like to put it in a category with all those other fad diets because intermittent fasting doesn't tell you to stop eating a whole entire group of food. It's just about the timing of your meals. There are a lot of intermittent fasting schedules, but the one that I like best and the one I want to talk about today is the 16-8 schedule. I also think this is the most reasonable one for people with diabetes. 16-8 means you're fasting for 16 hours. Fasting means you're not eating. The 8 is the 8-hour window during which you are eating your calories. But intermittent fasting is not an excuse to starve yourself all day and then binge on everything at night. You can try that, but it's gonna be a short-lived experience. You're not gonna feel good, you're gonna gain weight, and you're not gonna feel good. You can go crazy with certain types of intermittent fasting. There are people that overdo it. They'll starve themselves for a whole day, or they'll starve themselves all day and then eat everything in sight. Intermittent fasting can be very balanced and reasonable and help you feel good. When I follow that 16-8 schedule, I eat until about 10 p.m. and then I don't eat again until 1 or 2 p.m. Is that always an exact 16 hours? No, I don't know. I don't care. I know that when I eat up until bedtime, I sleep best, and then I feel best in the morning and throughout the whole first 2/3 of my workday when I don't eat until 1 or 2 p.m. That's what works well for me. A few things to consider before you start intermittent fasting. If you take insulin, talk to your healthcare team. A lot of people with diabetes think, I can't do intermittent fasting because my blood sugar will drop. If your blood sugar drops just because you skipped breakfast, that means you are taking too much insulin. You still need your basal background insulin when you are fasting. You cannot remove all insulin from the equation, but you might need less. Your insulin doses need to be adjusted. If you don't know how to manage your insulin doses on your own, intermittent fasting can be dangerous because you could have severe hypoglycemia from skipping a meal. If your basal background insulin from an injection of long-acting insulin or the settings in your insulin pump are too high and food is what keeps your blood sugar up to compensate for that excess insulin, then fasting could cause you to go low over and over and over. Insulin doses need to be fine-tuned. If your blood sugar drops just because you skip a meal, chances are you're taking too much insulin. If you're new to managing insulin, please know this. If you skip breakfast, that means you shouldn't take your mealtime rapid-acting insulin dose. If I were to increase my long-acting Lantus insulin dose from 11 units to 13 units, my blood sugar would definitely drop during that fasted window between when I wake up and when I eat at 2 p.m. That tells me that I need to reduce my long-acting insulin dose. Okay, so talk to your healthcare team before starting intermittent fasting if you take insulin or any other medication that can cause low blood sugar. If you have medications that you usually take in the morning with food, talk to your healthcare team about adjusting the timing of those medications. There are some people who should not practice intermittent fasting. If you have a history of disordered eating or eating disorders, if you experience frequent DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, if you've been experiencing frequent severe hypoglycemia, that's a sign that you need to go talk to your doctor and get your insulin doses adjusted immediately. Intermittent fasting can produce some small amounts of ketones. So if you're already producing ketones because your blood sugar is too high and you don't have enough insulin on board, intermittent fasting could push you into DKA. If you are pregnant, if you have advanced chronic kidney disease, if you're sick with something like the flu or COVID, when you're sick, you can produce some ketones, so it could push you further into DKA. A quick note on ketones: nutritional ketosis that results from ketogenic diets or fasting is not the same as diabetic ketoacidosis. The ketones are the same, but the amount is very different. Ketones from nutritional ketosis are very small amounts of ketones. Ketones from DKA are very large, lethal amounts of ketones. So here's what my day looks like practicing a 16-8 intermittent fasting schedule. I wake up in the morning, I go run and walk my dog. I get about an hour and a half of exercise, completely fasted. I do not fuel that exercise with food. I do not have to eat to keep my blood sugar up during that exercise. Fasted exercise can be easier because you aren't introducing food, which then means you have to take some insulin, and that insulin can cause low blood sugars, right? By exercising in a fasted state, I am simplifying how many variables are at play when I'm exercising. Now, this could be a whole nother video, and it will be, but here's a quick little snapshot. If I wake up with my blood sugar at 100, I can walk my dog 2.5 miles and run 3 miles, and I don't worry about going low because I have my long-acting insulin dose, my basal background insulin, fine-tuned to be as low as possible so that I don't need food to keep my blood sugar up. If I'm going low during fasted exercise, that tells me I have too much insulin on board. If it's not from a meal that I ate within the last 4 to 5 hours, because rapid acting mealtime insulin stays in your system for about 4 to 5 hours, then I know that I'm going low because I have too much basal background insulin, long acting insulin in my case, in my system. A tiny adjustment makes all the difference. Around 9 o'clock, my liver says, hey, you still haven't eaten breakfast. I am going to release some stored glucose to give your brain and your body some fuel. That can spike my blood sugar. Most days this happens between that 8 to 9 a.m. window, and I'm watching for it. I don't give myself insulin until I start to see my blood sugar rising, because every now and then there's a day when it just doesn't happen. Then I fast until 1 or 2 p.m. But I make sure to hydrate. I drink black coffee, plenty of water, seltzer. I'm using that window of time to stay hydrated. Intermittent fasting actually inspired me to cut all the extra stuff out of my coffee years ago. I trained my taste buds to drink and enjoy coffee totally black. For the first month, it tasted like mud. But once I got that first month out of the way, black coffee tastes so much better without all the sweeteners and the creamers and all that junk added to it. Now I can actually taste the real coffee, and that simplifies for me my intermittent fasting goals. At 1 or 2 p.m., I have my first meal of the day. Usually it's fruit combined with some type of fat, like an apple with peanut butter, and then I'll add carrots and hummus, or a pear and cheese and carrots and hummus, an apple and walnuts and carrots and hummus, or a bell pepper and cheese and carrots and hummus. Really simple, really light. I know I feel best throughout my workday if I fast until 1 or 2 p.m. and then I eat a cold meal for my first meal of the day. Hot, warm, heavy food makes me feel groggy and heavy too. Just a weird thing I know about my body. I usually eat my next meal around 5 or 6 o'clock. Dinner with my children. That's gonna be sauteed veggies with some type of protein. Every now and then I'll throw in a complex carb like rice so I can add some kimchi and salt and A1 sauce in there. But mostly I'm trying to eat a whole bunch of veggies with some protein. Maybe it's a big salad, maybe it's a veggie saute. I love taking 3 or 4 simple vegetables, chopping them up, steam them, saute them with a little bit of olive oil, add some salt, maybe a little seasoning, and then a clean piece of protein like steak, chicken, pork, chicken sausage, homemade turkey meatballs, occasionally venison. Really simple, clean protein. After dinner, I enjoy dessert. Sometimes it's popcorn, sometimes it's chocolate, gluten-free Oreos, ice cream, whatever I want it to be. My goal every day is to eat mostly whole foods and no sugar for the first 2 or 3 meals of the day. My last meal can be whatever I want it to be. I know I feel best when I go to bed with a full stomach. So eating my biggest meals in the last part of the day helps me feel my best. If you don't like eating right before bed, your fasting window could be adjusted. You could stop eating at 7 p.m. and fast until 10 a.m. Figure out what works for you. Once a week, I don't fast if I don't want to. So on a Saturday or a Sunday, I might eat breakfast. I might make pancakes with my kids, or I might just eat an apple and peanut butter at 7 a.m. instead of 1 p.m. It doesn't have to be all or nothing to be worth doing. Most of the time, I am fasting. But if I wake up and my body is just like, you know what, I really need breakfast, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have breakfast today. A big part of fasting is getting used to that feeling of being a little hungry and not freaking out. Most of us are used to eating and never feeling hungry. In this society, we are all so used to being full and then freaking out if we feel a little bit hungry. If your blood sugar is stable, feeling a little hungry is okay. Getting used to that feeling and letting it pass, letting it calm down, and not freaking out and thinking, I've gotta eat or I'm gonna die. You'll be okay. The first few days that you try intermittent fasting, you might freak out when those hunger pangs hit. You might think, I can't do this, I can't make it till lunch. But if you just take a deep breath, pop a stick of gum, drink some water, see if it passes. You might also overeat when it is finally time to eat because you're freaking out. Oh my gosh, it's finally time to eat and I've been starving myself all day. If that happens, that's okay. Let that be part of your early experiment with intermittent fasting. Try again tomorrow and see if you can be a little calmer about that first meal of the day. Let yourself experiment and see what happens. Intermittent fasting doesn't work for everybody. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. But it works really well for me, and it might be something worth checking out. Thanks for watching Diabetes Nerd. Find my books on Amazon.